Call the Budget Review Committee to order. It's August 28th, 2023. We're in the Board of Alderman chamber. It is 7:37 p.m. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Okay, Alderman Sullivan.
Here.
Alderwoman at Large Shoshana Kelly.
I'm here. I'm attending via Zoom because I am still recovering from surgery. I'm alone in this room and I can hear everyone.
Alderman Karen.
Here.
Alderman O'Brien is present, and Alderman Dowd.
Present. We have a quorum. First item on the agenda is public comment. Is there anyone that wishes to give public comment? Seeing no one? And we'll go right into communications. For a piece of communications received after the agenda was prepared. That would be you.
Yeah. We have communications from Alderman Como regarding R-23-149.
I'll accept the communication and place it on file unless there's any objection. Unfinished business,
There is none.
new business resolutions.
Before us this evening is R-23-136 relative to the transfer of $95,000 from Department 122, Information Technology, to Department 120, Technology Maintenance.
Okay, Treasurer Griffin, can you come up and, several of these will require questions, the answers. I'm assuming. You want to just give a brief overview of what we're doing here for the public, and then if there are any questions, I'll open it up for questions.
Sure, Mr. Chairman. John Griffin, CFO, Treasurer, Tax Collector. There are a few what I call housekeeping matters with a budget the size of the city and the number of departments we have where we can't simply transfer monies from one department to another. This is an example of Department 122, formerly known, 120, formerly known as telecommunications, now known as technology maintenance. That particular department needed $95,000 to balance, and the information technology budget had such funds available, and they were willing to transfer the monies from 122, Department 122 Information Technology, to Department 120.
Okay, any questions? Yes, Alderman Sullivan.
Thank you very much. Mr. Griffin, I'm sorry, I just have a frog in my throat. And this is gonna be the question for all these legislations, so I won't ask it 5 times or however many you have them. But just using this one as an example, I'm looking at the financial statements for period ending July 31 of 23. Does it, if we take 95,000 out of Department 122, I see there's 179,000 remaining. So is that, and then I read the analysis of this, that this money is actually, so it's not going to be taken out of that department. It's going to be taken out of surplus funds that we collected in fiscal year 23, correct? And then it's going to be applied to that. So I'm going to see, so that's the money, I'm just having a hard time getting my arms around that one.
Good question, and hopefully I can answer, Mr. Chairman, if I may. This is definitely fiscal 23. This is cleanup. At the end, June 30, all the bills came in, all the entries came in. There was a $95,000 shortfall in Department 120. And during fiscal 23, the information technology budget had enough funds to transfer into this particular department, so they're both positive, closing the books in fiscal 23.
Okay.
It has no, just for you folks, no impact on fiscal 24.
This is basically you're balancing your books. Alderman Sullivan?
Okay. I think you just answered it, but I'm not gonna see the budget in Department 122 for fiscal year 24 go up by 95,000? You're just.
No,
you're just-
no impact. This is fiscal '23.
Okay, you're just-
I would say closing
Okay,
transfers.
thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing none? All those in favor,
Well,
we gotta make a
Miss-
motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I didn't turn the page, so it's my fault. I apologize. I would like to make a motion to recommend final passage by roll call
Of R 23-136.
of R 23-136. Yes, sir.
Please call the roll.
Thank you. Alderman Sullivan,
Yes.
Alderwoman at large Shoshana Kelly,
Yes.
Alderman Karen,
Yes.
Alderman O'Brien votes yes, and Alderman Dowd.
Yes,
Okay, you have, 7 yeas and no nays, no, excuse me.
by the way, just for information purposes, I have all the legislation up here for question comes up.
That's-
Alderman O'Brien, would you make the motion for R 23-137?
Thank you. Before us this evening again is R 23-137, relative to the transfer of $6,000 from Department 171, Community Services, to Department 173, Environmental Health. Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion to recommend final passage by roll call.
Okay, the motion on the floor is to recommend final passage to the full board of R 23-137. Any questions? Seeing none? All those in, we get, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it has to be a roll call.
Roll call.
Yeah, okay, Alderman Sullivan,
Yes.
Alderwoman at large Shoshana Kelly,
Yes.
Alderman Karen,
Yes.
Alderman Michael O'Brien votes yes, and Alderman Dowd.
Yes.
Okay, you have 6 yeas, 0 nays.
I think your math might be off.
Yeah, I'm trying to count at the same
5.
time.
5.
5. Thank you, Alderman Clemmons. Are you gonna fire me after tonight?
Can't get anybody to replace you.
That makes me feel good, sir.
All right, next one is R 23-138, Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you. Also before us this evening is R 23-138, relative to the transfer of $220,000 from Department 194 contingency account 70100, general contingency, to the Department 198 interfund transfers. Account 89725, transfer to City Retirement Trust Fund. Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion to recommend final passage by roll call.
Okay, the motion is to recommend to the full board final passage of R 23-138. Questions? Alderman Sullivan.
Thank you. So I'm just looking at that 194 from the June statement. I've gone back a month, and that has 329,000 and change in it. So then we're gonna take 220. So the remaining 100,000, my math is right, that just goes back into, that's basically surplus, correct?
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Griffin?
the 220,000 is coming from general contingency. It's a good use of that money, as opposed to lapsing the surplus, putting it in this particular city retirement account. I'll get into that in a minute, but the remaining amount is contingency for negotiations that haven't negotiated yet. So we're not gonna lose that, we're gonna carry that over into fiscal '24.
Okay,
You know, as an example, if the fireman's contract passes, part of that expenditure is in 23, and that's in that contingency.
yep, okay,
It may not be the only contract.
okay.
One point of clarification, Mr. Chairman, if I may. The fire department has none of that. Fire department's contract expired June 30th, 2023, so they're in good shape in fiscal '24. This is for the AFSMI.
okay.
This is for the AFSMI bargaining unit.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
What's
Alderman
AFSCME,
Sullivan?
please?
American Society,
Uh, They generally work for the Department of Public Works.
Okay. Okay,
They're that labor force. Thank you.
okay. Thanks.
Any other questions? Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman Sullivan,
Yes.
Alderwoman Kelly,
Yes.
Alderman Karen,
Yes.
Alderman O'Brien votes yes, Alderman Dow.
Yes.
That's 5 yeas, 0 nays. Did I get it right?
Okay. Next, our 23-142.
Yes, before us again this evening is R 23-142, establishing a capital reserve fund for the purpose of funding major repairs, replacing furniture, fixtures, and equipment, and making capital improvements to the Nashua Center for the Arts facility. Mr. Chairman, I would like to make the motion to recommend final passage by roll call.
Okay, the motion is to recommend to the full board final passage of our 23-142. Questions? Alderman Sullivan.
Thank you. I just want to, I have a few clarifying questions around the account. And one of them was cleared up because I was under the impression, I read through the agreement last night and did some screen grabs of the different items in the account, and I was under the impression, and then somebody brought it up. I just saw the account shall be capped at 25,000 annually. I didn't keep reading from there. And then it said from each individual revenue source. So when I see that, I'm looking at, this could be $100,000 annually brought in for upkeep. My question around this account, the capital reserve fund, is it, I do understand, I think I understand, that a trust fund is not interest bearing, but is a capital reserve fund interest bearing? It is.
This particular one will be interest bearing.
Okay. Do we have an idea of what the going interest rate is? I mean, if we put $100,000 in this year, I mean, if, I don't.
5%.
5%? So it could double in maybe 15 years?
Could.
Yeah.
Hopefully it doesn't.
Huh?
Hopefully their interest rates come down, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
got a lot of capital we need to bond.
Yeah. Okay, that was one of my questions.
Yeah, if we could predict interest rates, we'd take Janet Yeltsin's position.
And then as we, more on the reporting responsibility, I did read that here, that this, it just says Spectacle agrees to provide to the city or its designee a quarterly managed prepared financial report. Will the board be getting a copy of that, perhaps at budget time or whatever, so we know how much money is going into that?
I'm gonna, do you want Alderwoman Clee to answer that, or you want to answer it?
I defer to Alderman Clee.
Thank you. Truthfully, the Board of Trustees did not state that it would come to the Board of Aldermen, but I do feel that it should come as a regular reporting, seeing that the Board of Aldermen is kind of overseeing. But the Board of Trustees will get a quarterly report on the revenues that have come into it, and that should go into that. Whether we have Mr. Griffin provide that, or, you know, Director Cummings, or coming from the city, but it will come through the Board of Trustees. It will be part of their quarterly minutes. We only meet on a quarterly basis. I believe that we have to, by the bylaws of the Board of Trustees, we have to have an annual meeting that has a complete report and so on, that gives all of that information. But every meeting, the Spectacle does give us an update as to what revenues have come in and so on. So, you know, I could be incorrect, and maybe Director Cummings could do that, but I think we could request that that report come to us after it hits the Board of Trustees and so on. Or you could wait for the annual report, because that is part of the agreement too, is part of the bylaws of the Board of Trustees is they have to get a report from Spectacle on an annual basis, a full report on an annual basis, which I think is the
there are two ways
cost
we can
in
get
total.
that. One, we can ask for it, or we can
Yeah.
have the representative of the Board of Aldermen that sits on that report, just bring it to us.
I am happy to, when that comes in, and right now my mind is blanking. I think it's the first Friday of each quarter, and we're having a special meeting, so it won't be at that one. But the last meeting we had, Spectacle did give us a revenue report, which is, it's the second Friday
Okay.
of the quarter. And we just met in August, so.
Okay.
Follow up, Alderman Sullivan?
Could I, is it okay if I ask just a couple of clarifying questions on the agreement that was made in December of 2020? Just because, okay, so.
As long as there's no motions to change it, because.
Well, I'm not gonna do that. But I did notice that we signed it in December 2020. And so I was curious as to why it took almost 3 years for us to, because it said in the agreement that was signed that we would set this account up. And we're now doing it in August/September of 23, so it's almost 3 years since we signed the agreement. I was just concerned, I just had the why now question.
I think I might be able to answer that. And just trying to give you a break a little bit. The truth is, maybe they should have set the account up, but there was nothing to come into that account. So to have an account just sitting there with zeros and so on, more or less didn't make sense. I do think this should have kind of happened sooner rather than later, but we are here now doing it and making sure that the money's transparent, having the public hearing, having it go through the budget, and then having it go through the Board of Aldermen.
Okay.
I think the bottom line question is, we don't lose any money in that interim.
No, there's just money, to be honest with you, there is money sitting there at Spectacle that we're waiting to come over for this
The
account.
monies that we're receiving now, since it opened
Yeah.
for business.
Um,
Yes, follow up, Alderman Sullivan?
Follow-up question on the agreement made with Spectacle, please.
Director Cummings?
Did the clock on that start in 2020? Somebody mentioned upon, I forget what the word was.
Substantial completion or
Occupancy. Is that when the clock started on this? So this basically goes until 2030.
Director Cummings, you want to get the microphone so Sue doesn't go deaf trying to record the minutes.
Thank you. Yes, for the
Donna.
record, Tim Cummings, Director of Administrative Services. I would have to check the exact dates, but it would be, we either counted the construction period in the operator agreement, or it starts right at the beginning of the opening, but it's for a 7-year period.
Right.
For the compliance period. I will double check to see how it correlates. I want to say, I believe the contract is up in something like 28, but I would need to double check that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Just a
Follow
comment.
up question?
If I'm not here in 2028, I just want the record to reflect that I would hope that we would be a little bit more aggressive on the amount of money, that the 10%, maybe that ticks up a few percentage points, because sitting on the joint special meeting, I've come to understand and appreciate what a capital reserve fund is. And if an air conditioning unit decides to go, that account could be depleted like that. So I would just ask, I looked at that and said, okay, so that's $100,000 a year, good start, not taxpayer money. However, just down the road, as this building starts to age, put on mileage, construction costs are gonna get more expensive. So I just wanted to be on the record as saying that.
Director Cummings?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Couldn't agree with you more. I absolutely agree. It's one of the reasons why I did not want that contract to be too long. I also was very cognizant of the fact that we had no real data to prove out this market yet. And so, I was also very sensitive to the fact that we were lucky that we actually attracted an operator to actually operate the facility. And so we only had one response to the RFP we put out to the marketplace, and we solicited all operators within New England to see if they had an interest. and Spectacle Live was the only one that actually responded. So with that being said, it's a negotiated amount. I would love to see it be more. I am very cognizant of the capital costs. It's something that I'm hoping that the trustees will keep in the forefront of their mind, because I think that that will be a conversation point when the appropriate time comes, to make sure that we're doing the best that we can for the city.
Yeah, follow up, Alderman Sullivan?
Thank you. As you talk, I just get more questions. Somebody mentioned a donation. There was a substantial donation made by a bank. Don't want to give them free plugs, but let's say another corporation steps up and they want to write a check for $250,000. Do they have to specify that that goes towards capital improvement? Or since they gave it to the city, we can put it wherever we want? And thus, we could put it into this fund to help us pay or offset, just until that account gets built up.
That's a great question. I'm trying to think through the mechanics of what you're asking. So you're saying a fictitious bank more recently, because we've had banks make donations.
Sure.
So we're talking about future monies. So you're talking about, and it doesn't even need to be a bank per se, but a future large donation, and it's not coming through Spectacle. That's a very important point, because Spectacle also sells sponsorships.
Right, I did see that.
So not talking about that, but it's actually something that an organization wants to give to the city in Nashua for the Performing Arts Center, for the Nashua Center for the Arts. So with that being said, I do not believe you'd be bound to be using it for capital or operating. You could decide, you could work that out in a separate, like, donation agreement.
Just for clarification, because I've been around, so has Alderman Clemens, for numerous donations to the city. First of all, any donation has to be approved by the Board of Aldermen to come into the city of Nashua. Second, the people giving the money can specify what they want it spent for, and if we accept it under those terms, we have to spend it in that area. We don't have to accept the money, but if the people giving the money say, let's say they want to buy a fire truck, we can't go out and buy an ice cream truck. So there are constraints. You'd buy the ice cream truck.
That's my understanding. The only clarification I wanted to ask, actually, CFO Griffin, was, can that money, once accepted, be deposited into this account? That I don't know, and I would defer to CFO Griffin.
Thank you, Director Cummings. There's some uniqueness to our contribution, folks, and it's, you set up a trust fund funded by contributions. You can't commingle contributions with appropriations. So we'd have to, somebody wants to give us some money, you folks may want to direct it, or the donor directs it to the building. We'd probably have to set up a trust fund funded by contributions.
And that's what I thought. So I just wanted to be, I thought that was the case, so that would be a separate account.
Donation account.
Right.
Okay.
Alderman Clee?
Yes, I apologize. I misspoke when I used the word donation, so I apologize for muddying the waters on that. If it's okay, I wanted to add to what Director Cummings said about our negotiation of the 10% and so on. When we originally negotiated, the intent always was that this number would grow. As I sat in many meetings where we kept saying, oh, let's ask for $2 a ticket, let's ask for this. And the truth was, every time someone would come that was an expert or something would say, yeah, if you were here for 20 years or 15 years and you were well established, you could probably ask for that, but you can't ask for it right now. And Director Cummings was quite on top of everything by not allowing a 15, 20-year contract. And the people in the city would have lost their minds if we did it in perpetuity, or just kept letting them renegotiate it at the same rate. I want to add a kind of an editorial to this. I've been to a number of shows there, and I can tell you without fail, every single person that has come there has talked about how incredible and how wonderful this place is. I keep talking about when David Sedaris came in, and the first thing he said to the audience was, they got laundry here. they were just very excited about the things that we have that other places don't have. And at a Board of Trustees, talking to Pete Lally and his conversation about he's getting contacted for people who want to do shows here. That's how successful. So I really do feel in 2028 or whatever year this is up, we will be able to push that number. I know we're still kind of new. As far as the capital reserve fund is concerned, I do believe we have some warranties and guarantees on some of the stuff that's there. So if something, which did happen with, not that we really had a failure with the HVAC system, but there was a couple of issues with it, that was still under warranty. So as we're building this up, you're right. When it comes time to need it, we're gonna need a lot more than 100,000. But each year this is gonna be built up, and then after those X number of years, I do believe we'll be able to negotiate and maybe even double that fund, if not triple it.
Yeah.
And that's just my heart. I don't know whether or not we'll be here, but I just wanted to put that out.
Any other questions on our 23-142? Alderman O'Brien?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you may indulge me, just with a brief comment. As Chairman of Infrastructure, I wish we had something similar to this other type of structures within the city. I mean, similar type of venue, 14 Court Street. Look at the mess, because it came down to funding. After years of spending caps, this, that, tight budgets and everything else, a lot of things don't get done. We couldn't pave the roads, and yet we're in a very aggressive type of paving type of program right now. Right now, we get 2 parking garages that need some TLC. And the thing is, if we don't get on top of it, then we're gonna see something catastrophic in the future. But the thing is, I wish we had something like this, more general across. We're great at building, let's be great at maintaining. And I support this wholeheartedly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other comments? Alderman Sullivan?
Just real quick, I echo that 100%. The other thing that I think that would have been good when we published this, and I don't even know if we said it in the meeting, we had to do this. It was in the agreement. I mean, I didn't know that. When I read the resolution, I thought, well, why are we doing this? That was my initial question. And then I read the agreement. I said, well, there it is. We have to do this. So we're basically just fulfilling our agreement with Spectacle.
Yep.
So I just wanted to put that in there too.
Anyone else? Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Sullivan.
Yes.
Alderwoman Kelly.
Yes.
Alderman Karen.
Yes.
Alderman O'Brien votes yes. Alderman Dow.
Yes.
That's 5 yeas, 0 nays. Motion carries.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, before I leave, I just wanted to leave you with a little fun fact, if I could. Just curious, does anyone want to take a guess as to how many tickets have been sold to date?
What's the prize if we guess right?
How
Bragging
many
rights.
shows?
Oh, I don't know, two or three a week.
Hold on, wait. Do I get a free ticket if I guess it
No,
right?
bragging rights.
15,000.
I got 15,000.
11,200.
11,200. So we've sold approximately 30 tickets to date. 30,000 tickets to date.
I was gonna say 30.
Scared me for a
Yeah,
second.
30,000.
I was gonna say 30, I bought that many, yeah.
Yeah,
That's great.
so, so that's, it's doing very well. And the operator is very pleased to date with how things are trending. And so I just thought you all would be, curious to hear that we've drove that much foot traffic to the downtown. So, thank you.
Just to add to that, even Spectacle management is blown away by how successful it is, and it's because of the build. I mean, that's what everybody keeps saying. They're contacting us to want to do our venue, so.
All right, let's move on to R-23-149. Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you. Also before us is R 23-148, relative to the fiscal year 2023 transfer of $150,000 from Department 132 assessing to Department 198 into fund transfers. Mr. Chairman, I would like to make the motion to recommend final passage by roll call.
Motion is to recommend of the full board final passage of R 23-148. Are there any questions? I think this is similar to the one we had earlier. No? All right. Please call roll.
Alderman Sullivan,
Yes.
Alderwoman Kelly,
Yes,
Alderman Karen,
Yes.
Alderman O'Brien votes yes, Alderman Dow.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, you have 5 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion is accepted. Passed.
Also before us this evening is R 23-149, amending the scope of the Park Rehabilitation Expendable Trust Fund and transferring funds into the Park Rehabilitation Expendable Trust Fund from East Side Recreation Facilities Expendable Trust Fund for the purpose of making infrastructure repairs to the Sergeant Avenue Park area. Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion to recommend final passage by roll call.
Motion is to recommend of the full board final passage of R 23-149. I will say that this had legal review, so it meets all of the legal requirements. And the only thing I'd like is, at some point, can we get a list of the names of all the parks that we have in the city?
You don't know them?
Hmm?
You don't know them?
Yeah.
They're on the website.
I know where St. Andrews is.
Okay, any questions? Alderman Sullivan.
More of a comment. I want to first of all say thank you to Alderman Clee and Alderman Karen for co-sponsoring this. Just a little story. Alderman Camo called me right around budget season and said, "Can you make a motion to add money to the budget?" And I fell over in my chair. And I said, "I don't do that. I don't know where you've been the last 2 years, but I don't do
He had a
that."
fever.
Anyway, he said, "Well, this is what I want to do, explain." And I said, "Well, let's look at these trust funds." And so I looked into the trust funds and I said, "Look, there's this trust fund that's sitting there." And I opened up my Apple map and it like carved out a section of the city, like let's just say it was a piece of pie. And the park that he wanted to fix was like right outside the piece of pie. And I went, oh, there's a lot of money sitting there, and this park needs help, but this trust fund just takes care of the parks in here. So maybe there's a way that we can open up that piece of pie or do something with it, so we can use that money and do that. So I really appreciate it. I think this is creative thinking. I really appreciate looking at these trust funds, and I know that, they capture a moment in time of why, and all the intentions are good for creating them and how they're funded and whatnot, but I think it's good that we relook at them and say, look, let's fix a problem that we have with money that we already have. So I was happy to endorse this, and I'm thrilled that we're doing it.
Any other, Alderman Clee?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was in a similar situation when Alderman Como had said that we needed to find the $250,000, and my first reaction was, this is in my ward. Sergeant Ave Park is in my ward, and of course I would want to do everything I possibly could for this, but I also had a little bit of anxiety that the year before that we had put $750,000 we added to the budget for St. Andrews, which really needed it, but I kept saying, shouldn't this have been budgeted as far as the Public Works budget and so on? Shouldn't they have been looking at this? So while I told him I probably would sponsor it, I did have some anxiety about it. So when we had discussed a little further and this was mentioned, I was definitely for it and so on. I also, when this first came through, when we talked about it, I said to him, do we really want to do all the parks, or did we want to take two of those really very large parks out of it? One that sits in my ward and one that sits in multiple wards, because they have advisory boards. But the truth is, sometimes you just do need to have something small done to it. I think those larger parks that I'm not naming do get a lot of attention. I think we should really keep this just for future knowledge. Information. We should keep this for those smaller parks, whether it be the Sergeant Ave or whether it be St. Andrews or and the Rotary Pool and so on. but I've sat here many a times when we talked about splash pads and we've talked about this and so on. And I think this is really a good use for where we can find that extra money. My only concern is, and I'm going to make an attack kind of on our spending cap, so to say, a lot of these have fallen in disrepair because of the spending caps and so on. And I think Alderman O'Brien kind of mentioned that when we get monies in, whether we have the money sitting there or not, we can't spend it, even though it's not going to come anything extra out of the taxpayers' money. So we do need to keep that in mind as we're even using the money from these trust funds. It's sitting there, it's not being used. It will not affect the tax rate, but we may not be able to always use it. May not, just because the money is sitting there doesn't mean we can do it, because we do have a spending cap. So I just want to make sure that that's loud and clear and really heard. So thank you.
Alderman Clemmons.
Well, that's the beauty of these accounts, is that you can spend from them outside of the spending cap. So the purpose of having them here is so that you can build up a fund for maintenance and things like that, capital improvements. And when the time comes and something happens, you can utilize those funds for that project. The other reason being is that the funds don't lapse. They carry over year to year. So these funds are a very good tool to use. And I think this was I think the story that Alderman Sullivan mentioned was basically how government in Nashua should work. You know, it's a story of the best of us getting together and doing the right thing for the citizens of the city, and it really should be commended. So I will support this when it comes to the full board.
Any other comments? I think it's a good use of this money as well. And we haven't, because of limited funds, taken care of our parks the way they should be taken care of. And when you think about who uses those parks, it's our young kids. And so I think this is an excellent legislation. When I first read it, I was concerned with the legality of it, but I had that verified and we're good to go. Any other questions? Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman Sullivan.
Yes.
Alderwoman Kelly.
Yes.
Alderman Karen.
yes,
Alderman O'Brien votes yes. Alderman Dowd.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, you have 5 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. New business ordinances?
There are none.
I don't think anybody wants to take anything off the table. I know that Alderman Jettie asked for, you wanted to come back for one of them, so. General discussion? None? Public comment? None? Remarks by Alderman. Alderman Sullivan.
I just want to say hello. I'm back from the Nashua Performing Arts rabbit hole that I spent the entire weekend in, so I just want to say hello. Good to see you all.
Okay. By the way, just for an update, school starts tomorrow. Anybody that drives cars, please be careful. It's, kids are back in school, except for Franklin Street, which starts the 5th. Main Dunstable and Birch Hill, which we're doing in phases over a couple of years, is all set for the students to go in. And the construction is isolated from the students. Franklin Street is complete. Franklin Street, Winter Street, behind the school, is being paved as we speak.
And Locust.
And the sidewalks are being redone. And also Locust Street, from the continuation of Winter Street to Franklin Street, was repaved. And that school is been in a very tight schedule, and it's being completed on time and under budget. Alderman Clemmons?
Thank you so much for indulging me. There was something that I did want to state on, I believe it was Saturday. I was driving home and I was on one of the streets within my ward, and I saw fire trucks and police vehicles there. So I stopped. I know the constituents whose home that was, and so I stopped and I went and I checked. And I want to thank our Nashville Fire Rescue and our police. She was up in the very top floor of her home. Did not know the fire was going on. They had to break. They didn't even know she was home. They were so kind and took care of her, got her out of there, kept reassuring her that everything was going to be okay. It was, thank goodness, a small fire. Once the fire marshal got in, she was able to go back in, smoke within the house, but they were so kind. They had to board up, of course, that window. They took care of everything from cleaning up everything to reassuring her that she was going to be okay. It's the first time that I've had the chance to actually witness them with a working fire and so on. And I can't say enough wonderful things about our fire and police. They were right there, and thank you very much to all of them that were there.
Anyone else? Okay. Let's see,
That's me.
that's you.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion to adjourn by roll call.
Motion is to adjourn. Please call the roll.
Alderman Sullivan,
Yes.
Alderwoman Kelly,
Yes.
Alderman Karen,
Yes.
Alderman O'Brien votes yea, Alderman Dowd.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, you have 5 yeas, 0 nays.
Okay, we're adjourned at 8:19 PM.